You're good enough for dog food. Come on, say bow. I never thought I'd be subjected to such humiliation. Although our marriage is still fresh, I've tried to comply with this woman's demands in my own way. But it seems all for naught. She might be an alien or something. That explains everything. I don't know the language aliens speak, but I no longer wish to talk to her. My name is Allison. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. Perhaps influenced by my game-loving older brother, I've been fond of games since childhood, especially role-playing games that immerse me in unreal worlds. I've made many friends through social media, which I started a few years ago. One of them is my husband, Carmine. We both liked the same game and shared favorite characters and spells. When a new game came out, we'd go buy it together. After years of such companionship, we became conscious of each other and decided to get married. Carmine's parents are Stanley, who is often away on solo assignments, and Bianca, a housewife. Stanley, due to his busy work, comes home only a few times a year. Carmine's grandmother, Stanley's mother, also lives with them but has been suffering from Alzheimer's for a few years now, and recently, her hearing has declined, making conversation difficult.
Grandma got forgetful all of a sudden when Dad went on his solo assignments. It must have been quite a shock,
he said. Bianca takes care of the grandmother-in-law. Since Carmine lived alone early on, his parents-in-law's home is just Bianca and the grandmother-in-law. I wondered if I would have to take care of a stranger who wasn't even my parent someday. However, both parents-in-law are healthy, and it seems that the opportunity is still far off. I was completely at ease. Until that one phone call. One day, it was my day off, and after finishing all the housework I had accumulated, I was playing my favorite game. Then, an unfamiliar sound rang out in my room. What's that sound again? Oh, a ringtone. I rarely get calls, so I forgot my own ringtone. Seeing the displayed name, I tensed up a bit. A call from Bianca? It was the first time I got a call from my mother-in-law, Bianca. And though nervous, I thought something might have happened, so I hurriedly answered. Hello? You're late. It's common sense for a working adult to answer promptly when a superior calls. The sudden sarcasm made me instinctively want to hang up, but I refrained. Sorry, I'll be careful. So what can I do for you today? As if. You're free on your days off, right? Playing with that incomprehensible toy? Do some work. Fulfill your duties as Carmine's wife. Told to visit the parents-in-law's home on my next day off, Bianca hung up. After the call, I was in a daze for a while. Why must I be subjected to sarcasm from a call I rarely get? I thought about ignoring it, but she is Carmine's mother, after all. Maybe I'll just listen to what she has to say. I decided to think that way. Of course, I reported to Carmine that night.
I'm really sorry. It's probably going to be a hassle, so you don't have to go.
It was honestly comforting to hear Carmine say that. Still, it's infuriating. At times like this, there's a place I always go to after work. Hello? Oh, if it isn't Allison, something bothering you? Susan from the pottery school greets me with a smile and those words. I start with a light heart, but now I'm completely engrossed. Susan is about the same age as my grandma, but is still strong and willing to listen to my life problems. She's like a mom to everyone. Of course, pottery is fun, but I come here to talk to Susan. Listen to this, Susan. I got a rare call from Bianca, and it was a parade of sarcasm. You must be free, she said, or do your duty as a wife. I didn't expect to be told such outdated things. Susan always listens to my complaints without a frown. Just ignore that pointless Bianca. There's still such old-fashioned people around. People who say such things are often lenient with themselves. My son's wife is just like that. I may not be blessed with Bianca, but I'm surrounded by kind people. It naturally makes me want to try harder. On my next day off, I did as Bianca told me and headed to the parents-in-law's home. When I parked and headed to the entrance, Bianca was already standing on the porch. Oh, scary. I struggled to stay calm and greeted her. Good morning. The norm is to act 30 minutes earlier. Don't keep your superiors waiting. She said that, and though I had just arrived, I already wanted to leave. I can understand this for work, but why must I be scolded for her inexplicable convenience? And a 30-minute early visit can be inconvenient for the other party, which I don't want to do. No, but it's still 10 minutes early. As I tried to answer, I was shouted at. Don't talk back. Am I in the military or something? I looked up, resigned. I will never open my heart to this person again, no matter what happens. And I will never take care of her in her old age. Even if offered a large sum of money, I refuse. Really, you're late for the appointment. Well, I'm off now. Bianca said this and was about to leave, so I stopped her. Wait a minute, you call me here without explanation, and I don't understand. Well, I'm going out until tonight, so you will have to come here on your days off from now on and do the housework. And take care of the person holed up in the back room, too. After saying this, Bianca left in her car. I've never met someone so hard to communicate with. She seemed kind when I met her with Stanley and Carmine, but that wasn't the case at all. I thought about going back without doing anything to avoid being scolded again. But more than that, I hadn't met my grandmother-in-law yet. Bianca had told grandmother-in-law, but since she didn't understand, she decided on her own that I didn't need to attend the family wedding. By the way, we only had a simple meal and didn't have a wedding ceremony. Later, Carmine and I were supposed to greet her together, but our days off didn't match, and embarrassingly, we never made it. Excuse me. As I opened the entrance door, a shocking scene unfolded. Too dirty. It wasn't quite a garbage house, but it seemed to be a matter of time before it became one. The room was overflowing with things, and a mountain of laundry, washed or not, spread across the floor, and the kitchen sink was full of dishes. Dust had accumulated in the corners of the room, and it was visibly appalling. The last time I came, the room was clean and tidy. What on earth happened? This is too terrible. As I was thinking this, I heard noises from the back room. Ah, grandmother-in-law. Thinking I should greet grandmother-in-law, I went to the room. Excuse me. Oh, since the day Bianca called me, I've been going to the parents-in-law's home as told. I've come to understand that Bianca probably spends every day out and returns home late at night. She doesn't seem to take care of the house or grandmother-in-law at all, and while she arrogantly tells me to do my wife's duties, it's clear that Bianca isn't fulfilling any herself. Maybe she got carried away because I obediently listened. I'm relieved that Carmine, who always plays with toys, finally brought home a wife, but after all, a wife is a stranger. I guess you're a free housekeeper. I was loudly told that once. In this day and age, harassing a son's wife is just unacceptable. Of course, I reported all of Bianca's actions to Carmine, who kept apologizing every time he heard about them. You don't have to go to that house anymore. That's what Carmine told me. He even said he would complain to Bianca himself, but I told him to wait because I had a plan. I continued to visit the parents-in-law's home because I was worried about grandmother-in-law. When Carmine saw that grandmother-in-law and I got along well, he was very pleased. After a few months of those days, while I was cleaning the parents-in-law's home as usual, Bianca said, There's a memorial service at the end of this month, and people will gather, but make sure you don't say anything unnecessary, okay? I smiled and replied, Of course, Bianca. Bianca seemed not to be completely satisfied with my obedient self. The memorial service was for Carmine's grandfather, the grandfather-in-law's death anniversary. He had already passed away by the time I married Carmine, but he was said to be a gentle and kind person. He got along very well with grandmother-in-law, and they used to travel together. Carmine told me they always held hands when they were out. Grandfather-in-law died of cancer, and grandmother-in-law took devoted care of him. But the parents-in-law did not help at all. It's just unbelievable. There's a lot of preparation to do, so make sure you come early, okay? And I think you know what I mean. Bianca said that, and I cheerfully responded, Yes, I'll act 30 minutes early. Yet she scolded me. Your voice is too loud, be quiet. I thought about throwing the TV remote at her, but managed to hold back. You can talk like that now, but just wait, get ready. I looked forward to the day of the memorial service. The long-awaited day of the memorial service. I was told to come 30 minutes early, but I went an hour early. Sure enough, it seemed to be an inconvenience, and Bianca, showing her true colors, came out of the entrance angry, saying, "You're too early. There's such a thing as too much." Honestly, when I saw her face, I thought she was a monster. I quickly cleaned the room and prepared the tables when I heard a cheerful male voice say, "Good morning." Heading to the entrance, I saw the staff from a famous local steakhouse standing there. I had been there once with Carmine, and the meat was tender and quite delicious. However, it's not kind to the wallet, so it's not a place I can often go to. As if saying I was fine, Bianca pushed me aside and began talking to the handsome staff in a slightly high voice. "Good morning. Nice weather today, isn't it? Ooh-foo-foo." I saw someone say ooh-foo-foo for the first time and went back to preparing. "Hey, hurry up and carry the food that arrived early," I heard Bianca's annoying voice. While thinking, yes, I headed to the kitchen. There I noticed something. Bianca, there's one meal short. Is this a mistake? Shall I call? When I said that, Bianca, with a mean smile, said this. "It's not a mistake. I never prepared a portion for you." I was stunned, never expecting to be treated like this. "After all, today people are gathering, and you, my son's wife, won't have time to eat. How shameless." Feeling like I had been called a greedy person, I finally felt indignant. Maybe because I didn't talk back, she felt good and said, "A housekeeper like you is good enough for dog food. Come on, say bow." Then she put the dog food left over from the dog they used to have in the parents-in-law's home in front of me. At that humiliating act, I couldn't help but laugh. I would never understand this woman, not in a lifetime, because she must be an alien or something. I have no intention of talking to someone with whom I can't communicate. Thinking that, I shouted at Bianca in a language I didn't know, pretending to speak alien. And for a moment, Bianca's face showed a hint of fear at my sudden behavior. "What? Are you out of your mind? Are you mocking me?" "Yes, I guess so. I've been putting up with it for quite some time now. I don't like living in a house with someone as nasty as you. I don't know what you're upset about, but will you be satisfied if we get a divorce?" I won't allow a divorce. Then I'd have to hire another housekeeper. That would be a waste of money. With that, Bianca came at me, trying to grab me.
"Stop it! How disgraceful!"
Turning around, there stood Carmine and my father-in-law, Stanley, along with Stanley's brother and his wife, who lived far away. Bianca hadn't noticed them because of our argument, but it was already time for Carmine and the others to arrive. I don't know how long they had been watching, but Bianca became completely subdued, perhaps because Stanley intervened or from the shock. Then it was time for the priest to come to the house. The memorial service ended modestly, and it was time to eat, but grandmother-in-law stayed in her room, saying she wasn't feeling well.
"I haven't eaten this in a while, but the steak here is really good."
While Stanley said that, I was bustling around, bringing drinks and such.
"Allison, come eat too. You don't need to do all this."
"Thank you. Come over here." My aunt-in-law, Cindy, also called out kindly. "Thank you, but it seems there is no steak for me." I pretended to be dejected as I said that, and when Cindy asked, why?" I replied, "I can't possibly say it. Please ask Bianca." Cindy glared at Bianca, who might have been frightened by her gaze, and started saying something ridiculous. "Oh, I ordered the wrong number of steaks. I told Allison to eat my portion, but she declined, saying she was fine. I'm so lucky to have such a nice woman marry into the family." Bianca was sweating profusely, and her eyes were darting around. "Is that so?" Cindy looked at me worriedly. "Yes, that's right." Behind Cindy, I could see Bianca's face completely at ease. That face was so comical, I struggled to keep from laughing. Bianca is always so kind. She points out when I'm lacking social manners. Today, instead of steak, she prepared this for me. I said that and brought out the dog food Bianca had handed me from the kitchen. Bianca turned pale at my unexpected action.
"What's going on? What have you done to my precious wife?"
Carmine asked, but Bianca remained silent. In the quiet room, Stanley spoke up.
"Well, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Allison is married now, so—"
Stanley started joking, and Carmine looked like he was about to grab him. Thinking it better to avoid an assault charge, I decided to call my ace in the hole. "Susan?" Everyone was surprised by my loud call. Then, from a back room, a cheerful voice replied, "Yes?" Out came Susan, grandmother-in-law. It turns out she's the Susan from pottery school. The day Bianca first called me over, we were both shocked to see each other. Never imagining that the grandmother-in-law would be Susan, we finished the housework at the parents-in-law's home together, laughing. The parents-in-law's home is a two-family house, and Susan's living space was very tidy. It was obvious that she wasn't sick, but Bianca never suspected. Since Bianca returned home late at night, we went out to eat and for walks. I enjoyed the time spent with my beloved Susan, which is why I was happy to visit the parents-in-law's home. Susan had made me promise not to tell the in-laws about our relationship. I was angry at Bianca's unreasonable words, but knowing it would end someday, I could bear it. Susan didn't attend the memorial service because she didn't want to see the parents-in-law's faces. Susan always prayed for grandfather-in-law's happiness after his death.
Why, Mom, don't you have Alzheimer's?"
Stanley asked, puzzled. "That's just something this woman misunderstood on her own." With that, Bianca, who had been shrinking herself, was glared at. "I wanted to live alone with my husband, but right after getting married, you started living with us for the sake of he's your son, and you and your husband indulged in luxury with the money saved from rent." Susan said this, and Stanley looked uncomfortable. "I thought I'd be free when your transfer was decided, but then this woman said she would stay here, and it was the worst. I couldn't even talk about kicking her out because you were never home. And I pretended to be hard of hearing because I didn't want to talk to you. And then you just assumed I had Alzheimer's. It's laughable." Bianca's face turned bright red. "What I couldn't forgive the most was being treated as absent from the grandchildren's celebrations. Well, I was very happy when I found out Allison, whom I'd get along with, was the spouse of my grandchildren." Susan said that and smiled at me. Bianca, not finding this amusing, suddenly started. "I'm sorry. Allison was always so cold to me. I was frustrated, and that's why I did such a prank today. I truly regret it. But if Allison had been kinder from the start, then I wouldn't have been too—" I had no intention of playing along with such a charade. "All the precious words you've given me up until now, Bianca, I thought I'd listen to them at home, too." I said that and pulled out a voice recorder I had hidden in my pocket. With each playback, Bianca's face grew paler, and the faces around us grew more severe. Susan and I had planned to expose everything on this day when the relatives gathered, regardless of the steak incident. After listening, Cindy started to laugh. "You talk about social common sense, but you've never worked a day in your life." Apparently, Bianca had never worked and had lived a life of leisure. After the children grew up, Bianca began to go out more, causing constant arguments with Stanley. Stanley himself was apparently a habitual adulterer who returned home late every night, participating in school events for the sake of public image, but otherwise maintaining a fake relationship, as I had heard from Carmine. Carmine also hated it and left home as soon as he graduated from high school. "That's why, pack your bags and leave right now. This is the precious home of my deceased husband and me. I will never allow you to return, and you too." Susan said this and glared at Stanley. "You have another woman out there, don't you? Do as you please, trash son. I'm cutting ties with you." Stanley left the house as if fleeing, perhaps hit too close to home. "And Carmine, I know you're busy with work, but come and visit once in a while. I understand if you don't want to, given such foolish parents." Susan said this to Carmine with a slightly sad look. "Then we're heading home." As Carmine and I left the house, Bianca, looking furious, chased after me. "Wait, clear up this misunderstanding. If I'm thrown out of here, I'll be in trouble." I thought if that was the case, she shouldn't have harassed me to begin with, but it's too late for her words now. "I don't understand. Why don't you work? You seem to have a great understanding of how to be a respectful member of society," I said sarcastically and got into the car. She was shouting something outside, but I didn't care. She might as well regret the life she's led as she pleases. As for the former parents-in-law, after being kicked out of the parents-in-law's home, Bianca showed up at Stanley's place where he was working alone. But as Susan predicted, Stanley was already living with his mistress, and Bianca was quickly discarded. Furthermore, it turned out that Bianca had also been having an affair, and even worse, with a married man, and she was sued for damages by his wife. Since both our former parents-in-law had been unfaithful, the damages were sort of offset, but Bianca would likely continue to pay the mistress's husband. Stanley might lessen his burden if he sought damages from his mistress, but to me, they are strangers, and it doesn't matter anymore. They were a match in a way, despite the fake relationship I had heard about. Carmine has no lingering feelings for his former parents and intends never to see them again. I feel the same. As for us, we've decided to live in the parents-in-law's home where Susan lives. The house, once full of unpleasant memories, was transformed as we disposed of all the furniture Bianca had collected, and made significant changes to the interior, making it feel like a completely different home. Susan is surprisingly energetic for her age, but I'm more than willing to take care of her if she ever needs it. Furthermore, next year our family will be growing. I'm looking forward to living a happy life with my beloved family from now on.
After returning to my parents' house for childbirth and leaving my home unoccupied, I noticed our savings decreasing through online banking and immediately called my husband, James. "Hey, did you take money out using the debit card I left in the living room?" To my question, James laughed loudly over the phone. Confused and unable to grasp his meaning, James shocked me with his response. "I spent it all for her." "What?" James's laughter only irritated me more. I didn't even want to continue the conversation. However, I opened my mouth to confirm what bothered me the most. "Did you check the name on the debit card?" "Huh?" A few seconds after James's clueless voice, his tone changed drastically to a shriek. I took that as my cue to hang up the phone. Then I called a certain person. "Hello, this is Amelia." Actually, the person on the other end was furious after hearing my story. After the call ended, I gently stroked my belly. I will absolutely protect the child in my belly. My name is Amelia. I'm a 38-year-old housewife. I was an office worker before getting married, but I resigned when I got pregnant. Given my age, I was careful not to overdo it until the birth. James and I got married when I was 36. Being the eldest daughter, I needed my partner to be adopted into my family, which led to breakups whenever I found a potential partner. After repeating the same cycle and nearly giving up on marriage, I met James at a party a friend dragged me to. James was enthusiastic about being adopted from the start, ready to proceed immediately. Though his eagerness was a bit much for me, I was drawn to James, who expressed his feelings for me. Above all, James's appearance was exactly my type. My parents were charmed by James's eloquence, accepted him as their son-in-law, and even built a house near his workplace for us. I felt blessed by everyone's congratulations on this smoothly progressing marriage, despite my initial hesitations. Considering my age, we planned to adopt a child. However, to our joy, I became pregnant 3 months after our marriage, delighting both our parents and in-laws. Yet, James seemed less thrilled than expected, and his attitude towards our marriage gradually changed since then. James's job allowed for flexible hours, and living nearby meant he usually came home for lunch since we got married. But as my morning sickness worsened, James stopped coming home for lunch and even began coming home later at night. Has work been busy lately? You've been coming home late. Since you're just at home, you have it easy, right? Got a problem with that? Whenever I asked out of concern, James only responded with harsh words, making conversation impossible. However, he occasionally brought home flowers, matching glasses, or pair watches as gifts. Though I felt somewhat appeased by these gifts, I appreciated his thoughtfulness. I convinced myself that James must be grumpy because of his busy work schedule. But eventually, he started coming home in the middle of the night, and after a month, the gifts ceased. Not only that, but it became common for him to return home in the early morning. Each time James came home, he would immediately take a shower, drink only coffee, and leave for work. At first, he would ask about my prenatal checkups, but even that stopped, and he seemed annoyed whenever I tried to talk to him. This transformation in James was particularly hard on me, already emotionally unstable from the pregnancy. What hurt the most was the smell of James's clothes in the laundry basket. The smell of a woman's perfume whenever I washed his clothes triggered my morning sickness. Initially, I thought he might have visited places with women for work-related entertainments, but then I realized the perfume scent on James's clothes was always the same. Could it be an affair? Voicing my fears suddenly made the reality sink in, and I trembled in terror. Despite being newlyweds and pregnant, the thought of infidelity was unbelievable. I tried desperately to convince myself it might be a misunderstanding, but that didn't alleviate my anxiety. Gradually becoming paranoid, I found myself unexpectedly bursting into tears or zoning out, feeling increasingly cornered. In my second trimester, I found a letter in the post. It was a credit card demand notice from a company I didn't recognize. When I handed the envelope to James, who returned home late at night, he took it reluctantly, checked the contents, and nonchalantly said, Sorry, can you transfer the payment for this? Huh? That's why I'm telling you to pay this off tomorrow, James yelled suddenly, causing me to flinch. Without paying any mind to my reaction, James pushed the credit card bill at me and headed for the shower. I stood there for a moment before coming to my senses and checking the contents of the envelope. $5,000! The amount was so staggering that I couldn't help but exclaim. What on earth was it spent on? Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at the credit card statement. Listed were names of jewelry and novelty stores, each transaction amounting to $1,000. It could be the money spent on gifts for me. Resignedly, I did as James had said and paid the bill immediately. However, our joint account, being new, didn't have much in it yet. So, I had to pay from my personal account. I really wanted to bill James, but the atmosphere wasn't right to bring it up. And since then, month after month, James kept dumping the credit card payments on me. I meticulously checked and copied each statement. By then, it was clear to me that the money was being spent on another woman, but being pregnant and feeling immobilized, I couldn't bring myself to suggest divorce, holding on to a sliver of hope that he would stop his affairs after the baby was born. However, a shocking truth came to light during a solo shopping trip one day. The day after I saw James's credit card bill. Stopping by a store, I realized it was where James had bought us matching pajamas. I remembered how happy I was when he got them, saying they were big enough to fit even as my belly grew. But my heart sank when I casually checked the price tag on a pair of pajamas. What's going on? The price was a third of what was listed on James's statement. There wasn't even a sale going on. In fact, the tag stated it was a new arrival, meaning this was the store's regular pricing. That's when I formulated a terrifying hypothesis. James was having an affair, buying things for his mistress that she liked or wanted, and to avoid suspicion, he'd buy something for me too. A hypothesis so vile that a person with a normal conscience couldn't bear to do it. Thinking back, the gifts never really suited my taste. I assumed they were James's preference, thinking we'd understand each other's tastes over time. Even if the designs were somewhat off for me, I was happy just knowing James had picked them out. But James had betrayed my genuine feelings. That betrayal hurt more than anything, and I was furious. I couldn't let him squander the money I wanted to save for our child. With that thought, I began planning to leave James. During this tumultuous time, Isla, my mother-in-law, visited our home. Isla, being frugal and somewhat absent-minded, was very strict about money. James found her thriftiness suffocating, but I quite liked Isla. The only issue was her doting on James, her son, believing everything he said was right. Is he eating properly? He seems a bit thinner. Yes, he's eating fine, I replied, avoiding mentioning who made the meals or where. The truth was, James hardly ever ate my cooking, maybe twice a week at most. But telling Isla that would make a big deal out of it. So I chose to gloss over it. After hearing my response, Isla left, stuffing the fridge with bags full of food before departing. How much of it would actually end up in James's stomach, I wondered as I put everything away. Then, I noticed a bag under the table. Inside the unfamiliar bag were a debit card and a seal, both belonging to Isla. I hurriedly made a call. Hello, sorry to bother you. You left your debit card and seal here. Oh dear, that's troublesome. Well, it's for a savings account I rarely use, so I'll pick it up next time I visit. Got it. Despite planning to return to my parents' house for the birth of my child soon, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about leaving the debit card at this house. However, since Isla said it was okay, I decided to just store it as instructed. I thought it wouldn't end well if I told James about it, so I kept it to myself and stored it where I usually keep my own debit card. 2 months later, I left for my parents' house with just my debit card. The thought of James now boldly meeting up with his affair partner was enough to bring tears to my eyes, but I had to brace myself for the birth first. During this time, Isla contacted me wanting to check the balance of her savings account. Reluctantly, I got in touch with James to check it for her. Since the last transaction was a bit old and Isla is not tech-savvy, I ended up checking the amount through online banking myself. Isla's savings account already had $200,000 in it. When I told her, Isla just said, "Thanks," and hung up. She's probably going to talk about it with someone in the neighborhood. I didn't think much of it. However, a few days later, my fears came true. It started with a phone call. It looks like the savings account has been canceled. Do you know anything about it? Being away at my parents' house for the birth and having left the house empty, I noticed the savings amount had decreased through online banking and immediately called James. Hey, did you take money out with the debit card from the living room? James laughed loudly on the other end of the phone. Confused and not understanding the meaning, James gave me a shocking reply. I spent it all for her. What? James's laughter was just irritating. I didn't even want to talk anymore. However, I had to ask the most pressing question. Did you check the name on the debit card? Eh? After a few seconds of his dumbfounded voice, a shriek replaced it. I took that as my cue to hang up. Then, I made a call to someone. Hello, this is Amelia. Actually. The person on the other end was furious after hearing my story. After the call, I gently stroked my belly. I will definitely protect this child in my belly. I immediately went to talk to Dad. Despite the heaviness of my full-term belly, I couldn't just sit around. Seeing me enter his office in such a desperate state, Dad was a bit shaken but soon regained his composure. Give it your all, and said, I first made a plan. By now, James must be getting an earful from the person I had just called. Just the thought of it made me unable to stop laughing. A few hours later, James called me. Why didn't you tell me the debit card was Mom's? Well, I didn't think you'd use it. Plus, her name is on the debit card. You should support me as a wife. Why should I support your affair? I could hear James groaning over the phone. Overcoming the sleepiness from battling it all day as a pregnant woman, I firmly presented James with a divorce. Let's get a divorce. Huh? Why all of a sudden? All of a sudden? You buy the same things for your wife and mistress and have me pay for them? The last straw was you trying to withdraw money from my account. Well, that account was your mom's, but I know everything now. Do we need any more reasons for a divorce? Are you going to make our child grow up with just one parent? I felt nauseous at James bringing up the child in my belly now, when he had shown no interest before. My anger exploded. My sleepiness completely disappeared and I cried out loud for the first time in a while. Better to be a single parent than to have a scumbag like you acting all high and mighty as a dad. James was silent for a moment at my outburst, then said something, but I ignored it and hung up. Just then, I received a call from Dad saying he had finished arranging for a lawyer. He offered to handle it on my behalf, worrying about my health, but I wanted to see James fall into hell myself, so I refused. Then, I called Isla. Without much of a greeting, she moved on to the topic of savings. I can't believe he would misuse the funds. But, Amelia, you were also at fault. If you needed something, you could have just told me, and I would have considered it. Huh? For the sake of the child, you wanted to replace the car, right? It wasn't good for James to choose a luxury car, but Amelia, you also didn't check in advance because you were going back to your parents' house. That's not good either. I was speechless at Isla's words. James had explained to Isla that he had no choice but to use her money because, after telling me it was okay to buy a car, he chose a luxury car and then couldn't afford it at payment time. I could only sigh at James's continuous lies. That's a lie from James. He didn't buy a luxury car, and I never said it was okay to buy one. Eh? What do you mean? James has been having an affair and withdrew money from your account for his mistress. He mistook it for my account and told me as if it was only natural. Isla seemed to be at a loss for words. She was deceived and had her money misused. No matter how much she loves her son, there's a limit. But knowing Isla, who dotes on her son, she might believe whatever James tells her again. I played the recording of the phone call with James that I had secretly made earlier. Isla listened in silence until the call with James was finished. Then, after it was over, she let out the longest sigh I've ever heard from her. Amelia, I'm sorry. It was my fault. No. How could I do this to Amelia, who is going to give birth to our precious child? Have you already signed with a lawyer? I will help discipline that child. Cutting ties is easy, but I can't let a child who causes trouble for others run wild. I love this aspect of Isla. Normally, she prioritizes her son, but she also cares about social standing, so she has always been strict with James about rules and regulations. Knowing Isla was essentially lenient with him, James often tried to lie to get out of trouble, especially when he did something wrong. I overlooked small lies, and even though Isla might have made snide remarks to me, she never did anything unreasonable. That's why I tried not to mind. However, this might have led to the current situation. Thinking this, I decided to make sure to drop him into hell this time. A few days later, a meeting was held at my parents' house with Isla included. I had the person I invited earlier wait in the guest room and then invited James and Isla in. When we guided them to the guest room, the face of James, who had been sulking, changed to one of astonishment. Why is Madison here? I invited her. She was necessary for our discussion today. Isla seemed not to understand who the person in front of her was at first, but upon my explanation, realized this was the mistress who had used her savings, and her expression filled with anger. You! How dare you misuse my savings? No, James said it was okay to use it. We went to luxury hotels and enjoyed spas and stuff. Why am I being scolded now? Madison showed no signs of remorse, sitting in her chair with arrogance. I wondered how long her composure would last, smiling inwardly as I seated Isla and James and took my place. Isla was the first to speak. I'm very sorry for what has happened. We would like to proceed as Amelia wishes, so please let us know your preferences. Huh? Why do I have to do what she says? Amelia's the one who got pregnant and frustrated me. I'm the one who should be getting compensation. Be quiet. What? It's the truth, isn't it? James continued to complain even as Isla scolded him, looking no more than a child throwing a tantrum, causing me to sigh. James glared at me, apparently annoyed by my reaction. In the midst of this atmosphere, it was Madison, the mistress, who spoke carelessly. Can I go home? I don't understand why I was suddenly called here. No, you're involved, aren't you? This isn't a place for you to relax, so please listen carefully. I'm busy, though, Madison said, playing with her hair. I tried to maintain a smile despite my irritation. James and Madison, we will be seeking compensation from you. $50,000 from James and $30,000 from Madison. $50,000? That's too much. If you have a complaint, we can take it to court. At the mention of court, James's face slackened. Madison remained unfazed. I was curious about her demeanor, but its meaning would soon become clear. Then, James, good luck paying $80,000. And since I'm pregnant, you'll be taking care of the birth expenses and everything else. What? Pregnant? I wasn't informed. Because I didn't say. Madison's revelation seemed to have caught James off guard. Having somewhat anticipated this from my prior research, I wasn't too surprised. Thinking about the even bigger shock to come, I was, in fact, inwardly smirking. Well, it doesn't matter who pays. I'll be expecting $80,000 from both of you. There's no way we can pay that amount. Don't get ahead of yourself. As James stood up in protest, a satisfying sound echoed. The source of the sound was James's cheek, now reddening. Beside him, Isla was breathing heavily, making it clear she had slapped James. Enough is enough! Mom! Amelia, I'll pay the full amount. Of course, I'll make sure James repays me. I'll also have him pay child support. James was left wide-eyed and frozen at Isla's words. I thanked Isla and delivered the final blow to James. Well, it might be tough, but good luck. Paying back mom and child support, and then your new life with Madison. Raising a child whose father could be anyone, James, you do have your kind moments, don't you? Whose child could be anyone? Didn't you know? Madison, it seems there are a few others. What? What do you mean? James, now standing, raised his voice towards Madison. Madison, thinking she hadn't been caught, looked up at James with a pale face. It's a lie! It's only James for me. And who might these people be? I presented Madison with photos that served as evidence, showing her entering lodging facilities with multiple men. You've been deceiving me? It's not like that. Really. I only love you. How can I believe that? Madison, in tears, pleaded her case in front of an indignant James, but the evidence made her words seem like lies. However, whether James and Madison stayed together or separated was of no interest or concern to me. Well, that's none of my business, so could you please leave the house? Hey, Amelia, wait. Maybe we should reconsider the divorce. The divorce is final. James, looking utterly despondent, was led away by Isla. Madison staggered out behind them. I watched them leave, feeling a sense of liberation. After the divorce, James and Madison didn't end up marrying. The child in Madison's belly was confirmed to be James's through a DNA test, but Madison lost interest in James once his money ran out and decisively left him. Yet, she still demands child support, and James, burdened with repayments to Isla and child support to both me and Madison, has most of his salary drained every month. He's recently started working in road construction to make ends meet. As for Madison, after cutting ties with James, the child is yours. She was extracting child support from multiple men by claiming the child was theirs. However, once it was revealed the child was James's, the men demanded their money back and cut off their support. Now, she lives in an old apartment with her child, juggling part-time jobs to get by. As a fellow mother, I'm concerned for the child. But since it's a consequence of her choices, I don't feel inclined to help. I just hope she stays out of my life from now on. As for me, after that meeting, I gave birth safely. A healthy boy was born. Despite it being my first childbirth, it was a quick delivery that even surprised the attending doctor. Though painful, meeting my child, whom I had carefully nurtured for 10 months, was incredibly joyful, and I vowed to make him happy with all my might.